And so thank you very much for the kind introduction and for this opportunity to join the Centre for International Governance Innovation for this International Conference on Climate Change. We build upon the achievements of others, and at your conference this year, you will look at how initiatives to address climate change can be built upon the ground from a ground-up approach, and what governance mechanisms will help us align these initiatives with multilateral and bilateral efforts. And when it comes to climate change, we are really, in a sense, all explorers, much like McClure. We press forward, we press ahead towards an economy that will rest more lightly on the ecosystems of this planet. We look for new ways to manage, new ways to provide the proper oversight and coordination activities. But let's look at the facts. We are fully engaged in the UNFCCC process. We are also one of 17 countries that have regularly and actively worked within the Major Economies Forum set up by President Obama last year to make progress in the negotiations. I just returned from New York, where we've completed what I believe is the 10th negotiating session of the Major Economies Forum. And much of what we saw in terms of the text that developed at Copenhagen originated with those MEF discussions. We are also a driving force amongst the so-called umbrella group in the United Nations process, which includes Canada, the United States, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and Russia. And as a country, we stand firmly behind the Copenhagen Accord, which represents, in my submission, a major turning point in international climate negotiations, and which has the clear political support of 137 countries. So don't let anyone tell you that Canada is not an engaged partner in the international negotiations. There is another myth, namely that Canada's Copenhagen target is not ambitious. Our target is clear: to reduce by 2020 a 17% reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions from the levels they were at 2005. This is the same target as our American neighbors. Today, in conjunction with this speech this evening, we have published the details as a government of Canada's contributions internationally towards climate change, and I'd like to share that with you this evening. This fiscal year, Canada will invest $400 million as part of our share of the fast-track funding commitment of $30 billion agreed to at Copenhagen. How generous is this $400 million? Well, be aware that we generate 2% of the world's carbon emissions. We are contributing 4% of the Fast Start Financing Fund of $30 billion. $400 million in this fiscal year, contributions to follow in the 2 subsequent years. All of these dollars are new resources. They are not repackaged existing expenditures of the Government of Canada. They are all new dollars. They represent a 500% increase in the amount that the Government of Canada has invested in international climate change efforts over the past several years. There is a myth as well that Canada is not ambitious domestically. But I would ask you to consider this. Over 1/2 of American electricity, United States electricity, is produced from some 650 coal-burning plants. Collectively, these plants in the United States are the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the world. And you need to know, parenthetically, that 41% of the carbon that is in the atmosphere as we speak tonight originated with the burning of coal. We have aligned our targets with the United States for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We have also come up with equivalent regulatory standards on key energy and environmental issues, such as the emission standards for cars and light trucks. I should say, in speaking with you this evening, again today, you will see in the news tomorrow, both the Government of Canada and the Government of the United States published the final North American tailpipe emission standards for all automobiles, light trucks and cars. When you go to a showroom to look at a 2011 vehicle, you are, for the first time in history, buying a vehicle that has North American continental emission standards. We must work together with the United States. If we do more than the Americans, we make our companies uncompetitive in a continentally integrated marketplace. But if we do less, we risk trade barriers. And I know that your conference will discuss these issues. What the U.S. needs, I must say, first and foremost, is to access the 25,000 megawatts of clean hydroelectricity that Canada can bring on stream over the next 25 years. I would submit also that it is a policy imperative for the United States to integrate their energy and environmental policies with ours. That is the surest way, frankly, for the American economy to achieve energy self-sufficiency, but also to meet their own environmental obligations to the world. Heavy-duty trucks, trains, ships, and planes, in all of these areas, we have continental teams at work. And so, don't let anyone tell you that we are not aligning our policies with those of the United States where it is possible to do so, and it is not in all circumstances. Finally, there is a myth that Canada really is focused too much on the United States and that we're not doing enough with our other bilateral partners. These are 5 myths about Canada's approach to climate change, 5 areas where we are certainly doing more than we have received credit for.
I read one of the speeches you gave recently in which you talked about the specter of green protectionism and why you think there's cause for concern as it relates to Canada moving forward. Can you give some frame of what that phrase means to you and why we should be concerned about it?
Well, I've been an advocate that we work together with the United States. I don't believe that our policies need to be identical to the United States. My position has sometimes been miscast in that way. Where our circumstances dictate that we would be best off to have common policies, then we should. And that includes the transportation system because we drive the same vehicles, we manufacture them together, our trains go back and forth across the border, the ships on the Great Lakes pay no attention to which side of the line they're on. And so in transportation we should have harmonized policies. Clearly, in terms of the electricity system, we don't. What we have to worry about with the United States are protectionist measures, and I think we're seeing 2 at the moment that we are dealing with. One is the subject of renewable portfolio standards, and so we're seeing a proliferation in the United States of state-imposed limitations on what is or is not renewable energy. And frankly, these have the effect of excluding Canadian hydro from the U.S. marketplace. This is a bad thing. The most important thing we can do as North Americans is bring on Canadian hydro to eliminate some of the 650 coal-burning plants in the United States. And this is a form of green protectionism we need to arrest.
And so the discussion was around the notion of which is more effective in terms of really doing something meaningful to arrest climate change. Is it the top-down? You get a global deal, you get a deal for binding restrictions on emissions at something like Copenhagen, like Kyoto? Or is it ground level? It's small changes made at a local level, different bylaws, something like that, that comes from the opposite direction. Which ultimately, in your view, is more effective in the long term?
Well, we need a binding international treaty. We need continental arrangements with the United States.